The bank app froze on my phone, then refreshed, and my stomach dropped so hard I swear I heard it hit the floor. Zeros, not the kind that come after a number, just zeros. My checking account, my savings, the education fund I'd built dollar by dollar for my babies. Gone. I sat up too fast in my hospital bed, stitches pulling tight across my abdomen, heart slamming like it was trying to escape my chest. I whispered my sister's name like a prayer and a curse all at once. Tanya, what did you do? 2 weeks post-surgery, barely able to walk to the bathroom without help, I had handed her my debit card and passwords because that's what family does. That's what sisters do. I trusted her with my body still healing and my future laid bare. She'd smiled, kissed my forehead, told me not to worry about a thing. "I got you, Keish," she said. "Focus on healing." Now the screen in my hand told a different story. Withdrawals at casinos I'd never set foot in, online betting sites lighting up my transaction history like a neon confession. Small amounts at first, then bigger, then everything. I called her, straight to voicemail. Again and again. My fingers shook so hard I almost dropped the phone. The nurse poked her head in, asked if I was okay, and I lied because I didn't even have the strength to explain the truth. How do you say out loud that the person who knows your childhood scars, who shared a bedroom and secrets and hand-me-down dreams, had gutted you while you were laid up and helpless? By the time I was discharged, the panic had settled into a cold, quiet dread. Rent was due in 3 weeks. My short-term disability barely covered groceries. My car note was already a month behind. That education fund was sacred. It was my promise to my kids that their lives would be bigger than mine had been. I replayed every conversation with Tanya, every "I'll handle it," every "don't stress," and felt stupid for believing love was enough protection. When I finally reached her, she cried before I could speak, loud, messy sobs, said she was sorry, said it got out of hand, said she meant to put it back. I asked her how you put back money that doesn't exist anymore. She said she'd won some back before and thought she could again. Thought. I stared at the wall while she talked, noticing a crack shaped like a lightning bolt above the TV, wondering how something so small could split everything open. I didn't scream. I didn't curse her out. I hung up, because somewhere deep inside, past the pain and the betrayal, a switch flipped. Survival mode. I pulled my medical binder closer and started a new folder on my phone. Screenshots, dates, times, every transaction, every lie she'd told me. If I was going down, I was going down with the truth in my hands. The eviction notice came faster than I expected. Bright paper, heavy words. I sold my car to buy time, took night shifts at a warehouse that smelled like oil and exhaustion, my body screaming every time I lifted a box. I slept on couches, told my kids it was temporary, smiled through video calls so they wouldn't see how close I was to breaking. Depression hovered like a shadow, whispering that this was my fault, that trusting was weakness. But pride, stubborn, inherited pride, kept me upright. Family gatherings went quiet. Phones stopped ringing. Nobody wanted to pick a side, so they chose silence. Tanya disappeared. No repayment plan, no follow-up calls, just absence. And in that quiet, I learned something sharp and painful. Betrayal doesn't always come with a villain's face. Sometimes it comes with your sister's voice, promising she's got you. One night, alone on a borrowed couch, I opened my laptop and typed, "How to rebuild after financial betrayal." The screen glowed back at me with words like literacy, boundaries, recovery. I didn't know it then, but that search was the first brick in a new foundation. I wiped my face, straightened my shoulders, and promised myself I would not let this be the end of my story, no matter what it cost me to keep going. Then my phone buzzed with a message from Tanya that made my blood run cold.
The message sat there, glowing on my cracked phone screen, like it had weight, like it could press down on my chest through glass and pixels. "Keish, please don't do anything. I can explain." That was it. No apology, no plan, just fear. My fingers hovered, then locked. I didn't respond. I'd learned fast that silence could be a shield, even if it cut both ways. I lay there on my cousin Rochelle's couch, staring at the water stain on the ceiling shaped like Mississippi, listening to the hum of her refrigerator kicking on and off like it had its own anxiety. My body still ached from surgery and from the warehouse, a deep, bone-tired pain that sleep didn't touch. I replayed Tanya's voice in my head, her laugh, her little girl cry she used when she wanted grace. I wondered when it had turned into a weapon. The warehouse nights were brutal. Cold concrete floors, supervisors barking numbers like we were machines, not people. I wrapped my midsection tight under my uniform, afraid one wrong move would split me open again. Every box I lifted felt like another reminder. This was the cost of trusting the wrong person. The women there didn't ask questions. We nodded at each other, shared snacks, painkillers, survival tips. One woman told me, "You don't look broke, you look tired." I almost cried right there between aisles 6 and 7. During the day, I made calls. Landlord, creditors, the school administrator who oversaw my kids' education fund. Saying the words out loud, "the money is gone," felt like swallowing glass. Some people were kind, some were cold. None of them were surprised. I started to realize how common my story was, especially for women like me who held families together with duct tape and prayer. Tanya finally called while I was on break, sitting on a pallet with my back against a wall that smelled like rust. She talked fast, tripping over excuses, said she'd been stressed, said gambling made her feel in control, said she never meant to hurt me. I asked her why she didn't stop when she saw the balance dropping. She went quiet. That silence told me everything her words wouldn't. I told her I was documenting everything. She laughed, actually laughed like I told a joke. "You wouldn't do that to me," she said. That's when I felt it, sharp and clean, the moment my loyalty finally snapped. "You already did it to me," I said, and hung up. My hands were steady this time. Weeks blurred together, couch to couch, shift to shift. My kids asked when I was coming home. I told them soon, because hope is sometimes the only thing you can give. At night, I studied budgeting, credit repair, legal rights. I learned words like financial abuse and saw my life reflected back at me in bullet points and case studies. I wasn't weak, I was targeted. The family silence grew louder. Group chats went dead when my name popped up. Holidays came and went without invites. I heard through the grapevine that Tanya was going through things, that I should be patient. Patient, as if patience could replace stolen years and vanished futures. I stopped defending myself. Let the truth sit where it was. Truth has a way of getting heavy. One evening, Rochelle sat beside me, handed me a cup of tea, and said, "You ain't wrong for surviving." It was the first time someone said it out loud. I held on to that sentence like a lifeline, because surviving was all I was doing, and it was enough. I started a small notebook, writing down recipes between financial notes. Cooking had always been my refuge, my quiet joy. Feeding people made me feel whole. I didn't know then that those scribbled recipes would become something bigger, something that could carry me forward. All I knew was I needed to believe in a future that didn't include begging for what was stolen. My phone buzzed again that night, a new transaction alert tied to the old account. My heart kicked hard as I opened it, realizing Tanya hadn't finished with me yet. The notification made my hands go numb before my brain could catch up. Same account, same sick feeling, another withdrawal. smaller than before, almost careless, like whoever did it didn't think I was watching anymore. I sat up so fast the blanket slid off my legs, and Rochelle yelled from the kitchen asking if I was okay. I said yes out of habit, even though my chest felt like it was cracking open all over again. I logged in, heart pounding, scrolling through the details with a precision that surprised me. Casino ATM, same one as before. She wasn't done. Or worse, she didn't believe I'd do anything about it. That hurt more than the money. It told me exactly how little she respected me, how invisible she thought my pain was. I locked the account that night, froze everything, changed passwords, filed a formal dispute, even though the woman on the phone spoke in that practiced, distant tone that told me I shouldn't get my hopes up. Since the access was authorized, she said gently, recovery may be limited. Limited. Another word I learned to hate. When I called Tanya, she didn't deny it, didn't cry this time either. She sounded annoyed, like I'd interrupted her, said she just needed a little more time to get back on her feet. I asked her when she planned to tell me she was still using my account. She said, "You weren't using it." That sentence lodged itself somewhere deep, sharp as glass, as if being laid up, broke and scared meant my money wasn't mine anymore. I told her not to contact me again unless it was about repayment. I meant it. Hanging up felt like stepping off a ledge, terrifying and freeing all at once. For the first time since the surgery, since the betrayal, I cried hard, not pretty tears, the kind that leave your throat raw and your eyes burning. Rochelle found me on the bathroom floor and didn't ask questions. She just sat with me until the shaking stopped. Work got heavier after that. Overtime, whenever they offered, I learned to move my body in ways that protected my healing scar. Learned which supervisors looked the other way when you needed a breather. Learned how to eat on $5 a day. Pride still kept me standing, but exhaustion sat heavy on my shoulders. Some nights I fantasized about disappearing, just sleeping uninterrupted without fear. That scared me enough to reach out for help. I found a free counseling group at a community center, mostly women, mostly stories like mine, divorce, scams, family betrayal wrapped in love and obligation. Listening to them cracked something open in me. I wasn't alone, and I wasn't broken beyond repair. The counselor said, "You can love someone and still hold them accountable." I wrote that down in my notebook, underlined it twice. My kids started noticing the strain. My son asked why I always looked tired. My daughter asked if we were poor. I told them the truth in pieces they could carry, that money was tight, that we were going to be okay, that sometimes grown-ups make mistakes and other grown-ups have to fix them. I didn't tell them their aunt had done this to us. I wasn't ready for that fracture yet. Then the rumors started. A cousin pulled me aside at a family cookout I didn't plan to attend, but showed up to anyway because hiding felt worse. She said Tanya was telling people I'd overreacted, that I was threatening her, that I was trying to ruin her life over a temporary loan. Loan. My mouth went dry. I realized then that my silence had given her room to rewrite the story. That night, I went home and laid everything out on the table. Bank statements, screenshots, dates, amounts. The truth looked ugly but solid, undeniable. I took pictures, saved backups. I wasn't doing this out of revenge. I was doing it out of self-respect. As I closed my laptop, my phone rang, a number I didn't recognize. When I answered, a man's voice asked if I was Keisha and said he was calling about a debt in my name I knew nothing about. My heart started racing before the man even finished his sentence. "A debt?" I repeated, pressing the phone harder against my ear like it might leak answers if I squeezed enough. He cleared his throat, professional but impatient, and explained there was an outstanding balance tied to a credit account opened in my name, my social, my address, old address, from before the eviction notice, before everything fell apart. I slid down onto the edge of the bed, legs weak, mind sprinting ahead of his words. I told him there had to be a mistake. I'd never opened that account. He paused, then said the kind of sentence that changes how you breathe. Ma'am, the account was accessed using credentials we have on file. Payments were made from your bank. My bank. My sister's fingerprints were all over this, even if her name wasn't. I felt sick, the room tilting just enough to make me grab the mattress for balance. When I hung up, I sat there in silence, so loud it buzzed. Fraud, identity theft, words I'd studied in articles suddenly had teeth. I realized Tanya hadn't just taken what I'd saved, she'd taken my future, tried to borrow against it like it was hers to spend. And the family's silence suddenly made sense. They knew something, or they didn't want to know. I filed a police report the next morning. My hand shook as I signed my name, the irony not lost on me. The officer was kind, but tired, like he'd heard this story too many times. Usually it's family, he said softly. I nodded, throat tight. Saying it out loud felt like betraying her, even now, but I was done protecting someone who had never protected me. Work didn't slow down. If anything, I leaned into it harder. Nights blurred into mornings. I learned to catnap on lunch breaks, to stretch my scar so it wouldn't stiffen. I stopped checking my phone every 5 minutes, stopped hoping for an apology that meant something. I focused on what I could control. Credit freezes, fraud alerts, paper trails so thick they felt like armor. One afternoon, my daughter called crying. She'd overheard adults whispering, heard my name mixed with words like police and court. My heart broke all over again. I told her I was handling it, that sometimes telling the truth makes noise before it brings peace. I hoped I was right. The catering idea started as a whisper, then grew louder. A woman from the counseling group tasted my food at a potluck and told me I was sitting on a gift. "You ever think about selling this?" she asked, eyes wide. I laughed it off, but the thought stuck. I started small. Plates for church events, trays for birthdays, cash only, clean books, every dollar accounted for. It felt good, honest work feeding people who appreciated it. Then Tanya showed up at Rochelle's house unannounced. I wasn't there, but she left a voicemail thick with panic, said the police had called, said she didn't think I'd really do it. That phrase again. I listened to the message once, then deleted it. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt tired. But underneath the exhaustion was something solid and new, resolve. The next day, I got a letter in the mail forwarded from my old address, court notice, my name printed bold at the top, official and final. I held it in my hands, realizing the quiet was about to break wide open. I stared at the court notice like it might start breathing if I looked away too long. My name in black ink felt heavier than it should have, like proof that this mess was no longer just emotional. It was legal. Dates, case numbers, language that didn't care about sisterhood or shared childhoods, just facts. I folded the paper carefully and slid it back into the envelope, hands steady in a way that surprised me. Somewhere between betrayal and survival, fear had burned itself out. I took the day off from the warehouse for the hearing prep, unpaid, of course. Every missed shift mattered, but this mattered more. I went to the legal aid office downtown, the kind of place with flickering lights and rows of metal chairs filled with people holding their lives in manila folders. I fit right in. When it was my turn, I laid everything out. Bank statements, screenshots, the police report, the fraudulent account details. The lawyer nodded slowly, eyes kind but sharp. "You did the right thing," she said. Hearing that out loud loosened something in my chest I didn't know I'd been holding. She explained the process. Long, messy, no guarantees. Tanya could deny it. Family pressure could get ugly. I told her I was already living ugly. At least this way I'd be honest about it.
We talked about restitution, about protecting myself moving forward, about how often women like me showed up too late after the damage was done. I was early enough to fight back. Word spread fast once the court date became real. My phone lit up with messages from aunties, cousins, people who hadn't checked on me when I was sleeping on couches. Now they wanted to talk, wanted to mediate. I let most of the calls go unanswered. One aunt told me I was tearing the family apart. I wanted to ask her where the family was when my kid's future disappeared, but I bit my tongue. Silence had become my boundary. The catering orders picked up quietly, almost shyly. A baby shower here, a repast there. I cooked after warehouse shifts, feet swollen, back aching, but my spirit lighter than it had been in months. Feeding people felt like reclaiming something that had been stolen, my sense of worth. I opened a separate account just for the business, no shared access, no shortcuts. Every deposit felt like a small victory. The night before the hearing, I couldn't sleep. I thought about Tanya as a little girl, braids crooked, following me everywhere. Thought about how I used to shield her from our mama's temper, how I'd always been the strong one. I wondered when strength turned into something people felt entitled to take from. I cried quietly, not for her, but for the version of us that no longer existed. In court, she wouldn't look at me. Her lawyer did most of the talking. When it was my turn, I spoke clearly, steadily. No dramatics, just facts. The judge listened, asked questions, took notes. When it was over, nothing was resolved yet, but everything was on record. The truth had a place to sit now. Outside, Tanya finally spoke to me, said she was scared, said she needed help. I told her I hoped she got it, but not at my expense anymore. That boundary felt like a line drawn in steel. As I walked away, my phone buzzed with an email notification from the legal aid office. Subject line, Next Steps. I opened it, unaware that what I read next would change the direction of everything I'd been building. I opened the email, standing on the courthouse steps, the cold air biting through my jacket like it had teeth. Next Steps sounded harmless enough, but my pulse quickened anyway. The message was longer than I expected, dense with information, attachments, deadlines. I skimmed, then slowed down, forcing myself to read every word. The legal aid attorney explained that based on the evidence, there was a strong case not just for restitution, but for expanded fraud charges tied to the credit account. It meant accountability. It also meant escalation. I sat on the steps and let that reality sink in. Escalation meant more court dates, more eyes on my family's mess, more chances for Tanya to paint me as the villain. It meant emotional labor I was already short on, but it also meant something else. Validation. Proof that I hadn't imagined this, hadn't exaggerated, hadn't overreacted. The law saw what she'd done for what it was. That night at work, I moved through the warehouse like a ghost. Muscle memory took over while my mind replayed every possible outcome. Tanya going to jail, Tanya walking free, family cutting me off for good, family finally telling the truth. None of it felt good. All of it felt necessary. One of the women on my shift noticed I was off and slid me an extra granola bar without a word. That small kindness almost broke me. The pressure started showing up in my body. Headaches, jaw clenched so tight my teeth ached. I snapped at my kids over little things, then apologized through tears. I hated that this mess was bleeding into them. I doubled down on counseling, added extra sessions when I could, learned grounding techniques, learned that anger could coexist with love, and that choosing myself didn't make me cruel.
Tanya tried again, emails this time, long and rambling. She blamed stress, addiction, bad influences. She promised repayment once she got back on her feet. I read them once, saved them for my lawyer, and didn't reply. Silence wasn't punishment, it was protection. Every response felt like an invitation to be pulled back into her chaos. The catering business took a turn I didn't expect. A local community organizer tasted my food at a church event and asked if I could cater a small fundraiser. Exposure, she called it. I hesitated, then said yes. That weekend, I cooked like my life depended on it, because in some ways it did. People asked for cards, asked for prices, asked when I was opening something official. I smiled and said soon, even though fear whispered that success was another thing that could be taken. Money was still tight, but it was honest money. I started paying down the smallest debts first, just to feel progress. Learned to celebrate small wins, an account brought current, a credit score inching up, a week without crying in the shower. Survival wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. The pressure started peaking after word got out that charges were moving forward. An uncle cornered me at the grocery store, told me I was airing dirty laundry. I looked him in the eye and said the laundry was already dirty. I was just washing it. My voice didn't shake. That felt like growth. One evening, as I balanced invoices and recipes at Rochelle's kitchen table, my phone rang. It was my lawyer. Her tone was serious but calm. "We need to talk," she said. "Tanya's attorney has made an offer." My stomach flipped. An offer meant choices. Choices meant consequences I couldn't undo. I closed my notebook, suddenly aware that whatever decision I made next would shape not just my future, but the kind of woman my children would see me become. I held the phone tighter as my lawyer explained the offer, her words measured like she was handling something fragile. Tanya's attorney was proposing a settlement, partial restitution, mandatory financial counseling, no jail time if certain conditions were met. My mind snagged on that last part and wouldn't let go. No jail time. After everything, after the nights I'd cried myself to sleep wondering how I'd failed so completely. I asked for time to think. My lawyer agreed, reminded me this was my choice, not anyone else's. When I hung up, I felt hollowed out. The house was quiet except for the ticking clock above the stove. Rochelle was at work. My kids were with their father for the weekend. I was alone with a decision that felt heavier than any box I'd lifted at the warehouse. I laid everything out on the table again. Numbers, timelines, notes. Tried to approach it like a business decision, not a sister's betrayal. If I accepted, I might get some money back. Not all, probably not even half, but it would be quicker, less public, less draining. If I refused, the case could drag on for years. More stress, more courtrooms, more family fallout. Justice didn't come with a clean price tag. Tanya emailed me that night, softer than before. She said she was scared, said she knew she'd messed up, said jail would destroy her. I read it twice, then closed my laptop. Fear hadn't stopped her before. Why was it supposed to stop me now? I thought about the months I'd spent sleeping on couches, the way my kids' voices had sounded strained over the phone, the humiliation of selling my car just to buy time. Nobody had offered me mercy then. At counseling, I talked it through. The counselor asked a question that cut straight through the noise. What outcome lets you sleep at night? Not what looks fair, not what the family expects, what lets you live with yourself. I didn't answer right away. The truth took time to surface. Work was relentless that week, but it gave me space to think. My body moved, my mind sorted. I realized something uncomfortable. I didn't actually want Tanya punished. I wanted her stopped. I wanted acknowledgement. I wanted my life back. Jail time might satisfy the anger, but it wouldn't rebuild what I'd lost, and it wouldn't heal the part of me that still ached over the sister I thought I had. The catering business kept pulling me forward. I booked my first recurring client, a small office that wanted weekly lunches.
It wasn't big money, but it was steady. I registered the business name, opened a proper account, filed the paperwork myself, triple-checking every line. Control felt good, necessary. Family reactions grew louder as decision time approached. Some begged me to accept the deal for peace. Others whispered that I was being heartless for even considering pressing on. I stopped explaining myself. Peace that costs your dignity isn't peace, it's silence with a smile. I'd had enough of that. The night before my deadline to respond, I barely slept. I dreamed of water rising, of me treading just above it, arms burning. I woke up before dawn, heart racing, and knew what I had to do. I called my lawyer and told her my decision, my voice calm and clear. She paused, then said, "Okay, I'll let them know." After I hung up, I sat in the dark kitchen and let the fear roll through me without fighting it. Whatever came next, it would be on my terms. I was done being acted upon, done being the quiet one. My phone buzzed almost immediately afterward, a new message lighting up the screen. It was from a family group chat that had been silent for months, and the preview alone told me the storm I just stepped into was only beginning. The family group chat exploded like it had been waiting for permission to breathe. Names I hadn't seen pop up in months suddenly had opinions, scriptures, warnings. Blood is blood. Don't do something you can't undo. She's your sister. I watched the messages stack up without responding, my chest tight, but my hands steady. It was strange how loud people got when consequences finally showed up. One message cut through the rest. My mother. Call me. No emoji, no softness, just command. I hadn't heard her voice since the eviction, since I told her I was handling things and she didn't ask how. I stared at the screen for a long time before pressing dial, bracing myself like I used to as a child. She didn't yell. That almost made it worse. Her voice was tired, disappointed in that way only a mother can manage. She said she never raised us to take family to court. I told her she also didn't raise me to steal. Silence stretched between us, thick and heavy. Then she said Tanya was sick, that addiction was a disease. I said I knew, and that sickness didn't give her the right to destroy my life. We ended the call without resolution, both of us wounded in different places. The fallout was immediate. Invitations stopped again. Cousins unfollowed me. An aunt posted vague quotes about forgiveness and tagged everyone but me. I felt the loss keenly, even as I told myself it was temporary, that truth has seasons. Still, it hurt. Losing money was one thing, losing your people was another. In the middle of that storm, something unexpected happened. The fundraiser I'd catered weeks earlier asked if I'd be willing to teach a cooking class as part of a community program. Paid, public, my name on the flyer. I almost said no out of reflex, too visible, too risky. Then I remembered how invisible I'd been when I needed help. I said yes. Teaching that class lit something up inside me. Women crowded into the kitchen, laughing, sharing stories, tasting sauce from wooden spoons. I talked about food, but I also talked about rebuilding, about starting with what you have. They listened. They thanked me. One woman hugged me and said, "You don't know how much I needed this." I did know. That was the point. Money started coming in more consistently. Not a windfall, but enough to breathe. I moved out of Rochelle's place into a small apartment. Nothing fancy. Clean. Mine. The first night there, I slept on the floor with a blanket and pillow and felt richer than I had in years. Stability does that to you. It feels like luxury. Then the official response came back from Tanya's attorney. They were angry, defensive. The settlement was off the table. They were preparing to fight. My lawyer warned me it could get ugly. Smear campaigns, delays, attempts to shift blame. I listened, nodded, and thanked her. Fear flickered, but it didn't take hold. I'd already lived through ugly. I knew how to survive it. Tanya sent one last message before everything went silent again. You never thought you'd choose this over me. I read it slowly, then typed and erased a dozen responses before settling on none. There was no combination of words that could bridge what she'd burned. Some choices closed doors forever. As the court date approached, I focused on my kids, my work, my healing. I stopped flinching when my phone rang, stopped apologizing for standing up straight. The depression still whispered, but it didn't run the show anymore. I was building something solid, brick by brick. The night before the next hearing, I organized my documents one last time. As I slid the final folder into my bag, my phone buzzed with an alert from my business account, an unusually large deposit I wasn't expecting. I froze, staring at the number, suddenly unsure if this was a blessing or the start of another test.
I stared at the deposit like it might vanish if I blinked too hard. 5 figures, clean, labeled with a company name I recognized but hadn't worked with yet. My heart thudded, not with joy, but suspicion. I'd learned the hard way that sudden money deserved questions. I called the bank first, confirmed it was real, confirmed it wasn't tied to my sister or any disputed account or any fraud flag. Only then did I let myself breathe. The voicemail came 10 minutes later. A corporate events coordinator said they'd found my catering business through the community program. They wanted to secure me for a series of quarterly events and had sent a deposit to lock me in. Her tone was casual, like this was normal, like my life hadn't been a tightrope walk just weeks earlier. I sat down hard on the kitchen chair, hands trembling, not from fear this time, but from relief so sharp it hurt. I cried, quiet, grateful tears that soaked into my sleeves, not because the money solved everything, it didn't, but because it proved something I needed to believe. My rebuilding was working, slowly, honestly, on my terms. I used part of the deposit to catch up on rent and utilities, the rest tucked safely into separate savings accounts with names like taxes, emergency, and kids. I paid myself a modest salary and left the rest untouched. Control felt like power. Transparency felt like peace. Court loomed anyway. Success didn't cancel accountability. In fact, it sharpened it. Tanya's attorney tried to frame me as vindictive, claimed I was exaggerating losses now that my business was thriving. I sat there listening, jaw set, letting my lawyer do her job. The judge wasn't impressed. Facts don't care about narratives. Then Tanya took the stand. She looked smaller than I remembered, eyes darting, voice thin. She admitted to the withdrawals, admitted to the credit account, blamed addiction, stress, desperation. I watched her without flinching, grief and anger twisting together in my chest. When asked if she believed she'd wronged me, she hesitated. That hesitation echoed louder than any confession. When it was my turn, I spoke plainly about trust, about consequences, about what it costs to rebuild when the damage comes from inside your own family. I didn't cry. I didn't raise my voice. I told the truth and let it stand. The courtroom was quiet when I finished. That felt like respect. Outside, reporters hovered, local, small time, but still unexpected. I declined to comment. My story wasn't for spectacle. It was for survival, for my kids, for me. Family reactions fractured further. Some finally reached out with apologies, admitting they'd believed Tanya's version because it was easier. Others doubled down, accusing me of enjoying the attention. I stopped engaging altogether. Healing doesn't require consensus. That night, back in my apartment, I cooked a meal just for myself. No orders, no deadlines, just food and silence.
I realized I wasn't waiting for anyone's permission anymore. I was living inside the life I'd fought for. My phone buzzed once more before bed, a message from my lawyer with the subject line, Court Decision Timeline. I opened it, heart steady, knowing whatever came next would close one chapter and open another I couldn't yet see.
The email said the decision would come within 2 weeks. 2 weeks felt like nothing and forever at the same time. I closed my laptop and leaned back against the couch, staring at the ceiling of my apartment, the same ceiling I'd once slept under on the floor, afraid to hope too hard. Waiting had become its own kind of discipline. I'd learned how to keep moving even when answers refused to show up on time. Business demanded my attention whether I was emotionally ready or not. The corporate events pushed me into a new level of organization, contracts, timelines, staff. I hired 2 women part-time, both mothers, both grateful for flexible hours. I made it clear from day one, clean books, fair pay, no shortcuts. I wasn't just building a business, I was building something that couldn't be taken from me. My kids came over more often. We cooked together in my small kitchen, laughed at how cramped it was, made plans for bigger spaces someday. They noticed the change in me. My daughter told me I stood taller. My son said I smiled with my eyes again. Those comments mattered more than any bank balance. The family situation stayed complicated. My mother called months, cautious, like she was stepping into unfamiliar territory. She asked how I was doing, not about the case, about me. I told her the truth, that I was tired, but okay, that I missed her. She didn't apologize, but she didn't defend Tanya either. It was something. Healing doesn't always come with grand gestures. Sometimes it's just the absence of resistance. I ran into Tanya once at the grocery store. No lawyers, no courtrooms, just fluorescent lights and cereal aisles. She froze when she saw me. I nodded, polite but distant, and kept walking. My heart didn't race, my hands didn't shake. I realized then how far I'd come. She no longer had access to my nervous system. The waiting weighed on me in quieter ways, dreams where I was back in that hospital bed, watching numbers disappear, mornings where I had to remind myself I was safe, solvent, in control. Counseling helped, so did routine, so did reminding myself that closure doesn't always look like relief, it often looks like acceptance. A week before the decision, my lawyer called with a warning. Tanya's side had submitted a last-minute appeal, trying to reduce potential restitution. More paperwork, more arguments. I listened, then laughed softly, not because it was funny, but because it no longer scared me. Do what you need to do, I told her. I'm ready. The catering business hosted its biggest event yet that weekend. I stood in the back of the hall watching people eat food that came from my hands, my recipes, my resilience. Pride swelled in my chest, clean and deserved. I thought about the woman I'd been months ago, broke, betrayed, sleeping on couches, and felt nothing but compassion for her. She'd carried me here. The night before the decision window opened, I couldn't sleep. I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of tea, scrolling through old photos on my phone. Family barbecues, holidays, Tanya's smile beside mine. I didn't erase them. History doesn't disappear just because it hurts. I set the phone down and whispered a thank you to myself for surviving. At dawn, my phone rang. My lawyer's name lit up the screen earlier than expected. My breath caught as I answered, knowing that whatever she said next would decide how this story officially ended or how much longer the fight would continue. I answered the phone before the second ring, my voice calm even though my pulse thudded loud in my ears. My lawyer didn't waste time. She said the judge had ruled. Not final yet, but decisive enough to shift everything. Tanya was found responsible for the fraud. Restitution ordered. Structured repayment. Mandatory addiction treatment. No jail time for now, but strict conditions. One violation and that protection vanished. I closed my eyes as she spoke, letting the words settle into my body. Responsible. Those syllables felt heavier than any punishment. The court had named what happened, officially, publicly. I hadn't imagined it. I hadn't exaggerated. I hadn't destroyed my family out of spite. I'd told the truth, and the truth had held. Relief didn't come as fireworks. It came as quiet, a deep, steady quiet that spread through my chest like warmth. I thanked my lawyer, listened to next steps, timelines, enforcement mechanisms, practical things. When I hung up, I sat there for a long time, hands wrapped around my mug, steam fogging my glasses. Outside, the city moved on like nothing monumental had just happened. Inside, everything had shifted. Tanya called later that day. I let it go to voicemail. Then I listened. She cried this time, real crying, not manipulative, not performative. She said she was angry at me, grateful to me, ashamed of herself, all at once. Said treatment scared her. Said she hoped someday I'd forgive her. I didn't delete the message. I didn't respond either. Forgiveness isn't something you owe on a schedule. The family response was mixed now, but different. The loudest critics went quiet. A few people reached out with genuine apologies. Some didn't. I stopped measuring my healing by their reactions. Peace doesn't require unanimous agreement. It requires alignment with yourself. The business continued to grow, steady and intentional. I hired an accountant, took a financial literacy course for small business owners, and actually enjoyed it. Numbers no longer felt like enemies. They felt like tools. I opened college savings accounts again for my kids. Small deposits at first, symbolic more than anything. Watching those balances grow felt like reclaiming a promise. I told my children the truth, age-appropriate but honest, about the money, about their aunt, about accountability. They asked hard questions. I answered them without bitterness. I wanted them to learn strength without learning cruelty. One night, my daughter hugged me and said, "You didn't give up." I held on to her a little longer than usual, throat tight. I thought often about the woman I'd been at the beginning of this, lying in a hospital bed, blindsided, trusting without a net. I didn't shame her. I honored her. She loved fiercely. She believed in family. Those weren't flaws. They were qualities that needed boundaries. One evening, I got a message from the counseling group. A new member was struggling after a family financial betrayal. They asked if I'd be willing to talk to her. I said yes without hesitation. When we spoke, I heard my old self in her voice, the fear, the self-blame, the exhaustion. I told her what I'd learned. Document everything. Protect yourself. Don't let guilt bankrupt you twice. Her relief was immediate. Passing that on felt like purpose. I sat alone that night, lights low, reflecting on how close I'd come to disappearing under the weight of it all. Depression had tried to claim me. Silence had tried to bury me. Betrayal had tried to define me. None of it won. I was still here, stronger, clearer. My phone buzzed one last time before bed. A text from Tanya. Just 3 words this time. I understand now. I set the phone down, unsure if she truly did, but certain that I did. Tomorrow would bring paperwork, payments, progress. But tonight I allowed myself something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. Peace didn't arrive all at once. It came in moments. Small, ordinary moments that stitched themselves together into something solid. Mornings where I woke up without dread sitting heavy on my chest. Evenings where I balanced my books and the numbers made sense. Laughter with my kids that didn't feel forced or fragile. I stopped waiting for the other shoe to drop. Life wasn't perfect, but it was finally honest. The restitution payment started quietly. No ceremony, no apology attached. Just deposits that showed up like clockwork. I didn't feel joy seeing them. I felt closure. Each payment wasn't about the money. It was proof that accountability could exist without my constant vigilance.
I monitored it, of course, old lessons stick, but I didn't obsess. My energy belonged to better things now. The catering business crossed a milestone I never let myself imagine during those couch sleeping nights. I signed a lease on a small commercial kitchen. When I held the keys in my hand, I cried harder than I had in court. This space wasn't charity. It wasn't luck. It was earned. Every late shift, every humiliation swallowed, every boundary held, it all lived in those keys. My kids helped me paint the walls. We ordered takeout and sat on the floor, joking about how we were official now. I hung a small framed quote near my desk. Nothing grows where there are no boundaries. I wanted them to see that strength wasn't loud. It was consistent. Tanya entered treatment and stayed there. That mattered. It didn't fix us, but it mattered. We didn't talk much. When we did, it was careful, polite, real. I stopped expecting her to become who I needed her to be. Expectations are heavy. I set mine down. Whether forgiveness came later or not, I knew one thing for sure. I would never abandon myself again to keep someone else comfortable. My mother came by the kitchen one afternoon unannounced. She walked around slowly, touching the counters, reading the labels on my shelves. Then she hugged me, tight and wordless. That hug didn't erase the past, but it acknowledged the present. Sometimes that's enough. I began speaking at community workshops about financial boundaries and recovery. I told my story without shame. Women cried. Men listened. People asked questions they'd been too afraid to ask before. Every time someone thanked me for being honest, I felt the last traces of that hospital bed helplessness dissolve a little more. I still had scars. Emotional ones don't disappear just because you win. Some nights I woke up anxious, checking my accounts, checking the locks. Healing isn't linear, but I trusted myself now, trusted my instincts, trusted that even if life knocked me sideways again, I knew how to get back up. Looking back, I understood something clearly. Betrayal didn't break me. Silence didn't erase me. Poverty didn't define me. I survived because I chose truth over comfort, boundaries over guilt, growth over bitterness. I didn't rise to prove anyone wrong. I rose because my life deserved my full presence. If my story has a lesson, it's this. Love doesn't mean access, and strength doesn't mean sacrifice without limits. You can be compassionate and still protect yourself. You can grieve what was lost and still build something better. I am living proof. If you learned something new from my life story, please like this video, subscribe to join our community for more stories like mine, and comment down below where you're watching this video from. I'd truly love to know.